34 years ago this week, a major flood ripped through Arizona. 6,000 people were evacuated during what turned into the second wettest February on record. Nearly all the bridges crossing the Salt River were damaged or destroyed, leaving only the Mill Avenue Bridge open. To avoid the traffic nightmare, drivers ditched their cars and turned to trains. Those trains moved 46,000 people across the Salt River for 2 weeks. Joining me now for the backstory is 12 News meteorologist Ginger Jeffries. Ginger, I cannot imagine trains taking 46,000 people back in 1980. Why was this particular flood so bad?
Well, one note about the trains too, tickets were only $1.
Oh,
just imagine that.
wow.
But you know what really compounded the flooding that we saw in 1980? It was a double whammy. Not only was it a lot of rain coming down, but this rain was actually melting some of the snow in the higher elevations. So now think about it. We here in the Phoenix metro area, we get on average a little over 7 inches of rain for the year.
Yeah.
I looked at the rainfall totals over this 9-day span. Nothing really got over 3/4 of an inch. But again, quick math there. That means 8 inches of rain in a span of 9 days. So a year's worth of rain, but add on top of that some of the snow melt that was coming down. So it was the double whammy, and quite honestly, we just don't have the terrain to manage it.
Yeah, and hence the second wettest. Okay, so here's the deal. It always seems as though when it floods here, it is devastating. So explain why flooding here in Arizona is so much different than in other regions.
And it's exactly what we just talked about, the terrain.
Yeah.
You know, as far as Seattle and Sacramento, West Coast, what they have on the ground is dirt. What we have is tiny little rocks. And the best way to think about it is if you have a glass full of rocks and a glass full of dirt, and you pour the same amount of water in there, the one filled with rocks, it's going to overflow.
Right.
Rock is a barrier. It's the same reason people use sandbags when they're trying to keep water from going around, you know, coming in.
Yeah.
It's literally going to divert the water, and it's going to go down to the lower lying areas. So again, we have all these little rocks. We have so much rain coming down, and it's just going to follow the flow and head down to the lower lying areas, which ultimately causes the flooding.
Yeah, as opposed to, you know, the dirt that's going to absorb all that rain. Okay, so what was the flooding, though, back in 1980 because of El Nino?
Yeah, and you know, a couple months ago when we were talking about the severe El Nino that we were setting up for, we're seeing the impacts of that to the west of us right now. You know, the atmospheric rivers, the heavy amount of rainfall. In 1980, yes, it was an El Nino year. So typically we're going to prepare for more storms, more rainfall. However, it wasn't a severe El Nino year. It was actually considered weak. So what we saw in 1980, again, I think it was just the perfect storm, the trifecta of not having the right terrain, 9 days of rain, and then again, it being an El Nino year.
Oh,
just
that's
wild stuff, right? When you see this
incredible.
footage, it's incredible what's going on to the west of us, and then parallel to what we saw in 1980 here.
No kidding, just getting pounded. All right, Ginger, thank you so much for that.